for Inspire Care 360's ECE Leadership Director Development Program that we are continuing to roll out throughout the nation for our members in particular. Jim Cooper, along with Jen Guadioso and myself, are hosting today's meeting. And joining special guest is Veronica Nelson, owner of Childtime Inc. out in Utah, as well as Brian Sprafka, who is owner of Small Hands, Big Dreams in Ohio. And we're very happy to have them. Today, we're going to be covering a number of different topics. And first off is what we're going to be speaking of is why there was a need for a certified leadership development program for directors. Two is the considerations we have taken in evaluating the program, and what the program will offer your director, your leadership team, as well as you as owner operators. The value you likely will receive from this program, as well as what is the investment for this program. And we then have both Ronnie and Brian to provide some member perspectives because they went through the owner version. There is both a director version of this and an owner version. We do not mix the directors and the owners, but what we do have is different sessions. We will probably be having another owner session in early summer that is coming up. So if someone sees this and says, I'd love to be part of that from an owner perspective, we're very happy to have you. As I mentioned, two of the owners who participated in the last one was Brian Sprafka and Veronica Nelson, and they'll be coming up near the end of the presentation. So why is there a need for a certified leadership development program for directors? We have often talked about what is the secret sauce in our industry and what is the compelling reason of why success occurs through our schools, all of our schools. And they have a centralized secret sauce, and that really happens to be about culture. The culture that we are able to establish within our organizations allows us to stabilize our workforce, allows us to grow our enrollments, and allows us to optimize our operations for a very successful program that we deliver to our children and the families of those children. So when we look at culture, a lot of it is focused on obviously the people side, and that's the staff. And we have different elements of that, from wages to the benefits that draw them and keep and retain your staff, to them feeling like they belong to your schools and why they belong as part of it, and they're a component of your schools and they just don't work there, to the fact that they need respect, they need self-esteem that they see as part of what their element of the school and how they prop the school up, and as well as opportunity. Those are the different elements that really develop culture within a school through the staff that you have. When we look at that model, there is one true missing component though, and that is the component of leadership. Leadership is a component that is critical because there's one element of assembling the right team, having the right person in the right seat, but then it is how do we then go towards our vision, to look toward our mutual values, to go towards our mission, our objectives, and our goals. And we need leadership to help inspire us to get there. And that's what this program is all about, is how do we develop leadership in an industry that really does not and has not traditionally had a tremendous amount of resources on the development of leadership skills. So what is really the difference between management and leadership? There are only two ways to influence human behavior. You can manipulate it, or you can inspire it. When we talk about what is the difference between managing and leading, managers seek to control a situation. I think we've all seen this, especially with our directors or budding directors, the directors who have been there a while, and even ownerships and our ownership skills. And even myself in owning and operating my own schools, I have found myself wanting to control situations. But what do leaders do? Instead, a leader looks to inspire trust within their organization and who they have to influence and need to influence. Managers focus on getting things done. We have to get it done by this time. We need it by this deadline. It has to get done this way. That's all there is to it. This is why we have to do it. Okay. That's a manager approach. Sounds very, very common in our industry. Why? Because we have regulatory responsibilities with our licensors. We're caring for kids, the most precious element of a family's life. And we have in our hands too, is our teachers, who it is formidable for us to ensure that we are engaging them. So to get accomplished, we look to always drive towards results. The challenge is managerial approach to just getting things done does not empower others, and leadership truly empowers others. So let's talk about what are the critical values. The critical values that we're looking to achieve for a director is we're looking for them to be able to recruit and retain their staff, which is absolutely critical to our success in our schools. They must be able to really recruit and retain top talent, and leadership is critical to how they do that. Recruiting and retaining families is not just parallel, but is interdependent on retaining and recruiting staff. So to be able to recruit and retain families is absolutely critical. And then the ability within this engagement is to communicate with both your staff and your families ongoing. I know I'm speaking the obvious about our directors as well as our owners who are highly involved in their centers, but it's also very important that there's an ability for leaders to have clarity on both vision as well as the strategy so they can implement it and implement it in a way that it really engages our staff. And then the visibility and understanding of our critical business metrics. So as they say, that which is not measured cannot be managed. Well, for you to lead an organization, you need to also understand what are your goals and your objectives that you are focusing on, so you can have all the members of your team in that rowboat rowing together at the same cadence to swiftly get across the river. And develop high performing and engaging teams. So it's really important for us to look at what does a high performance and engaging team means. It really means a team that works together. It means a team that supports one another, that how they work to support one another, they work to be there, they work to help each other out when others are struggling. And leadership is a critical component about that. The next slide we're getting into, Jim's going to take over, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about what it means to really be a leader. So Jim, why don't I hand it over to you? And you're on mute. One of the most common Zoom challenges we have.
There we go. Okay. All right. The phrase coach-like leadership is something that stems from the belief that the best leaders, especially in today's environment, maybe not 50, 60 years ago, but in today's environment, the best leaders tend to also be the best coaches. So as a leadership skill, independent of coaching by itself, the coach skills that we teach are going to make people stronger leaders. So, picking up on the theme Tony just built, there's a shift that goes on from blaming, in other words, finding responsibility, to what just happened, what can we learn? Same thing, telling, classic management task. We spend a lot of time in coach training and in good coaching led organizations, listening, probing, synthesizing what we're hearing, and getting to basic truth instead of just telling or listening perfunctorily and then just telling. Hierarchical, he who has the most stripes wins to collaborative. There's no such thing as stripes, especially in areas where subject matter expertise and being close to where the work is being done is most important. That's where you may help guide a subordinate, but at the end of the day, a classroom teacher is the expert in dealing with those kids. Judgmental, same thing, to endorsing. You kind of get the sense here in terms of the tone of the task. Leaders, and this is still very much true, work-life balance is a joke to some leaders. It's, you have no life outside of work. Work is your life. Compared with being more accepting and realizing that people are going to do their best work if they're balanced, they're energized, and they're not just working till midnight every night responding to emails. Motivation by competition, pitting teams against each other, rather than having everybody challenge themselves to their own level of excellence. Justifying explanation, fault pinning, comparing to learning, and what can we learn, and what new opportunities just presented themselves, results to person. If you take care of the people, the results are going to come. Next slide. Okay, in the program that we take the coaches through, or potential coaches through, here are the 5 core coaching skills. And you can see, if you think back to the last slide, you'll see threads back to it. Being able to really listen, and listening is an active process. Okay, listening and questioning play hand in glove. Encouraging, again, not demanding, but encouraging, letting people motivate themselves with the proper help and support. Requesting gets to, after you're done thinking through the problem, there's work to be done. So part of the role of the coach is helping their client see the next step and see the developmental task ahead, and challenging that person to step up. And then lastly, getting right down to the tactics, action planning. If I'm going to move in that direction, what's my first step, second step, how fast, things like that.
And one of the things,
go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, thanks. One of the things I think is critical about this program, you'll hear coaching a lot, because this is based completely on a coaching certificate that's leadership development for directors. So what Jim does is, Jim is the facilitator of this program. And Jim, if you could just tell us a little bit about the background of sort of where this came out of.
Sure. In prior to 1995, coaching as a discipline, frankly, had no discipline. It was the wild, wild west. And if you could spell the word coach, you could be one. That was acknowledged to be an issue if the practice of coaching was going to become more like a professional discipline. So the International Coaching Federation was founded in 1995 with the express intent of learning, researching, and defining what the core skills and nuances were to be an effective leading coach. So what you saw in the skills that we teach on the left side are a direct descendant from what the ICF has determined to be 10 critical competencies that all coaches that go through, proper training get. And so we've been very intentional about grounding the training you'll get in this program back to those 10 core critical competencies. And the other thing is, when we teach it, and you'll probably hear this in our guests that were former students, it's not enough to talk about it. You've got to get in the arena and wrestle around and get dirty and actually practice the skills. So there's a very heavy, probably about 50% intentionally of practice using the skills each time we get together for training. Okay, the process itself, this next step, let's say this is the flow of a coaching exchange. Step one, what is it we're talking about? What's the operational opportunity, and what's the developmental opportunity that drives it? Getting into the listening and questioning and feeding back the discover. It's a joint process. What we're trying to get in the coachee is an awareness of or more awareness, more critical awareness of really what's at the nut, what's the root cause of the situation or the opportunity we're dealing with. Once that's done, okay, what's a broad approach to developing the skills we need, the person we need to be to address that's challenges. And then finally, back to the tactical planning. Okay, what's going to get in the way? What are the obstacles? And helping the coachee come up with strategies to overcome the obstacles, and then recapping, planning, turning it into accountable actions. So that's in essence, that's the flow. And it doesn't proceed linearly through any given coaching conversation. You may bounce around between those, but at the end of the day, you're after clarity and accountable actions. Tony?
And Jim, let's put just some practicality for our audience here. Oftentimes owners have a myriad of different opportunities with their directors, the way that they need to coach them, as well as the way that their leaders and their leadership team, administrative team, and directors need to work with the teachers. So what I want to do is bring up just sort of like a scenario that could be very common. And that could be where a teacher has chosen consistently not to follow the direction of a director. And typically what happens in an environment like that, when you take a more managerial skill approach from a director who may not have a great deal of background in leadership development, as well as a coaching type of skill, they tend to just lock heads with that teacher. Like, I really need you to come in at this time. I really need you to do this. I really need you to do this, and you need to do this. Our owner says you have to do this, or I say you have to do this. And there's that sort of overbearing approach. I think a lot of us understand that, have heard that in the business. What Jim has been talking here about, from the listening, encouraging, questioning, requesting, and action up front, this is really sort of morphing how a director engages with the teachers. The way that instead of it's about, hey, we're going to implement and control that teacher, it's starting to understand, it's starting to hear, it's starting to encourage that teacher and try to find out what is sort of the root cause. Jim, do you want to add some perspective on that?
Sure. It gets back to what I said a second ago in terms of clarity. By interacting in a skillful way between the coach and the coachee, the coach asks the questions and listens for nuance and listens for all the potential sources of difficulty or challenge. And that's where the clarity comes in. After a good, clear session of that, the coachee has a much better sense of where's the growth. It's about helping the coachee determine their own growth areas and then helping them attain them. So that's a big part of the skills part. And then functionally in the meeting itself, then you've got the exchange where each of those skills plays out in that broad approach to the discussion. Tony, does that meet kind of what you were looking for?
Yeah, and to make it back to the practical side is, so that conversation could be a lot different in the future with your director and the teacher. So instead of the teacher being sat down in the office and told they have to be in at this time, or that they have to do something, the coach or the director in this situation, with these skill sets that they would have out of this program, would be able to ask the teacher, what is it, the kind of things that are having you, so you are coming in late? What is it that's getting you delayed or getting you wrapped up? What is the issues that you are challenged with our scheduling for some reason? And then starting to break it down. One thing for sure, I will tell you, from being a practitioner in this myself, of being a coach and having this leadership skill, it is an investment in an individual's time. It is not quicker to be a leader who coaches as to a manager who dictates, but the results are vast. And that's what we're going to continue to talk about a little bit more. Anything further before we move on, Jim?
Yeah, I think the other really large opportunity is you deploy these coaching skills, not just to a leadership level, but eventually, done well, every single person from top to bottom is picking up these skills because they're seeing the skills being modeled. And there's a lot of things that are at a technical level where truly the person close to the issue, in your case, the teacher, there's lots of other examples. The teacher is one who's probably the expert at the real problem. So it's getting the teacher empowered to assert their leadership and say, no, here's how it really works. And having the other people, the boss, the director, the owner, whoever, listening to that because they're being coached by the subject matter expert, in that case, the teacher. So it's that expert role can roll up and down in the organization depending on where it's most appropriate. And that's powerful.
Perfect. That's a great cap on that. At the conclusion of this program, your director will have the opportunity to, can't always say that they will do it if they haven't been paying a lot of attention, but we believe, and we've seen results directly from our participants, that they will be having the skills and have tested the skills to help support and develop teammates, subordinates, peers, others that they work with, people that they may even find that they need to talk to, from your payroll company to your suppliers. And instead of getting into combative situations, or maybe it's more of a passive situation where they're not addressing the needs that your schools require, they now have a vehicle to address those issues. It allows them these skill sets to truly empower their teammates. So the teachers, the cook, bus driver, assistants, and as well as to really work with owners and operators to help them get to their goals and objectives, to help really develop an accountable team. When you are a leader who's using coaching skills, part of your whole identity of coaching is being an accountable partner to that person you're coaching. That means allowing them to not only get to the point of what they want to achieve, but you helping them see their goals through. Instead of mandating them to get in, you're on the journey with them. And you can truly help and inspire your teammates. You see this word inspire pop up a number of times. I think we sort of like the word. We're going to keep it around a bit. And support teammates to solve their own challenges. So quite often, I think we see, especially as owner operators, as well as directors, what we oftentimes see is a litany of teachers streaming into the director's office and basically handing off their problems to a director. As we know, a director role is one of the most difficult roles there is. I'm not talking just in schools, period, plain and simple. And if you've played the role of a director, if you've been a director, you know it, the heart and soul of it. It is not an easy job. And to have all the teachers walking in and dropping their problems off onto a director, it is a very difficult task for that director to take those on. So for that director to be able to work with individuals and to start to coach them and have that person start to solve a lot of their own issues, it both resolves the short-term need of the problems being dropped on their shoulders, as well as a long-term model so that teachers don't keep on coming back into the director office and dropping those problems on her desk. Support teammates by building a very strong communicative and supportive culture. This is really about the opportunity that as you coach everybody similar and you create a coaching environment for your teams in your schools, people tend to communicate a lot better because they're not assuming why others are taking certain action or using different words in a certain way. This gives them opportunity to, like Jim was just talking about, to ask questions, to listen, to empathize, to understand, to really get to the facts of what is going on, as to just assume and to try to move on. So it's really supportive for developing a strong communication. It also grooms your future leaders. I'm not sure if you agree with me, but I will tell you my very best directors in my schools have all come from existing staff. All my best ones have come from existing staff. I do have talented ones who've come from outside, but the ones who understood our culture and have been able to develop up to become from a teacher or an assistant teacher up to a in-charge person to a director. I even have one who's come from an assistant teacher all the way to our coordinating director who runs all of our schools. And the reason is because it's a wonderful grooming opportunity to drive those leadership skills into your valuable teammates and elevate your school's culture to really help them empower and making them accountable. And that's critical. There's one thing to empower your teammates and your directors, but there's another thing to actually have them accountable for what they're empowered for. And coaching is really, again, about that ability to not only empower, but allow those people that you're coaching and you're leading to become accountable. Developing teams through experiential development of their own self-worth. In other words, team members aren't being told what they need to do. They're actually getting to experience it and really understand why we do what we need to do. Instead of a teacher not understanding simply why we have to shovel a walkway because licensing requires it, they start to understand that it is all part of licensing and why we keep our centers open and why they belong to our center. And then stabilizing the teacher staff, which, get to the ROI, returning the, reducing the turnover is huge. It's up to $10,000 per staff member every time we lose one. And, unconscionable, I don't think that's exactly a word, Jim, but it is close to one. But it is the fact that you have other staff member and families who oftentimes will leave when a staff member leaves. So if you can stabilize your staff through having strong leadership skills, that is a huge return on investment for you as an owner operator. And the directors and administrators obviously empower teachers and staff to manage the daily challenges and opportunities. So there should be a lot that comes out of this program. Are they going to have every single one of them? Absolutely not. But what they're going to have is they're going to be on the journey of each one of these, where they may not be on that journey today. And they will have a lot of the skills, and they will have come out practicing the skills and applying those skills readily throughout this program and for the future. So they will really be on a journey to have every one of these skills. Okay. And so how does this work? How is the program? Well, it is 9 sessions long. In those sessions, they're 2-hour sessions that they're run by Jim and Jen as part of it. Within those sessions, they go on for 9 consecutive weeks. Right now, we're targeting to start at the end of March, and we're targeting Friday afternoons, mid-afternoons. It is a little bit of a slower time for directors. We're very focused on the fact that directors are very busy. No more than 1 miss. We have some flexibility here, but it is really important that if you do invest to have your director involved, that we're not pulling them out of this training. It's critical for them to be able to be a certified coach out of this program, a leadership development graduate and coach. They need to not try to miss many of these sessions. And they're going to spend time doing a lot of experience share. So they're going to go to your schools after they come out of the program. They're going to work within your schools and start the coaching process immediately after the very first session. And then they're going to be coming back to this program in sharing their experiences. And from there, within that general session, there will be, in addition to that, breakout rooms. So during the sessions, they're going to have, we break them down into triads. And with those triads, one person plays the coach, one person plays the coachee, and another individual plays the observer. And then we go through rotations. But it is very much hands-on. So this is far from a lectern where you have only 5 to 10% retention. This, because of the ability that we do demonstration and we do role playing within the sessions, we get to the 50% level of retention. But actually, since you then take the experience and put it into the real world, they're getting to the 80% level of learning retention from the National Training Laboratories and Maine studies. So we really do get to some significant imprints of retention levels. So your staff, team members, your directors come out of here really understanding the program. Jim, as I progress here, do you have any additional comments on this?
No, I think you covered most of it, Tony. I think well, go ahead.
No problem. So at this time, I'm going to bring on, let me bring on Ronnie first. Ronnie, if you want to come on, I know that you were traveling in a vehicle. So if
I
you
got
would like,
home.
Well, good. Wonderful. There is Veronica Nelson, and she is the owner of Child Time. How are you, Ronnie?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Wonderful. And so, Ronnie, what we wanted to do is we wanted, you recently are a graduate and a certified coach out of this program. Our owner version is really focused on becoming a certified coach. Our director version is slightly more focused on the director's leadership components, but very similar programs. And Ronnie, if we could start with it, what was your perception of what this program was going to be before you actually went into it?
Um, Before I went into it, I was, it's hard to think back now. I was interested because I wanted to learn to help my people grow as individuals in a way that I wasn't doing before. When you talked about managing before, managing is an efficient way to get things done, but it doesn't develop skills within people to take those skills off of your plate for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And then once you joined it and you were in the middle of these sessions, what was your experience with the sessions overall?
Um, Overall, I learned so much about asking the right questions and about listening. And when you think about, a lot is said about developing the right culture in your school. What better way can you make an individual feel valued than to listen to them and to question them based upon what they are saying, to really encourage them? All of the things that you learn how to do in the coaching, I feel like there are things that we want our leaders to do. And that's the way that, those of us that own multiple centers, we want every staff member to receive the same experience that we would give them ourselves. And so we want our directors to treat them that same way. And those are skills that I think every leader needs to have, is how to listen to them, and how how to ask those questions. Personally, learning how to suffer through silence and learning how to, instead of provide an answer, how to really give that person time to come to a conclusion that they already have, just helping them take the steps towards getting there. Personally, to me, it's very rewarding to help someone else in their growth path, and instead of moving them to the end, I guess.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. What did you find as the most challenging part outside of making sure you made the time to go? What was the most challenging part about this program with your own, when you participated? What did you find challenging?
You do have to prioritize the time to test your coaching skills. You have to set that time aside to test your skills on whoever you're planning on coaching. So to set it, but I just looked at, I have these meetings that I already have with my team, and I'm going to use these meetings that I already have as an opportunity to develop my coaching. And I told my team ahead of time. So if I'm taking a different track than I used to, if I'm doing things a little differently, it's because I'm in this program and I want to develop this skill within myself so that I can help all of you to grow. And so that was the biggest challenge, is finding the time, but making the time was very rewarding.
That's fantastic. And just to sort of wrap up with you before we move on to Brian, obviously you're on here, you gave us the time for even this meeting. I assume you would recommend this program to others because of it being rewarding for yourself.
Absolutely. I think that you learn so much, and I really think that, people dismiss Zoom as a way to connect with others, but in the breakout rooms, being able to test your skills on strangers and other, and you develop relationships with people throughout the process, but being able to test your skills, helping another owner go through what they were struggling with that week, and being able to again, not provide answers, but get support in learning how to help people take their next steps was amazing. And I think that every individual in early childhood could benefit from learning the coaching. Even if you have no intentions of becoming a professional coach, it is something that will further your skills as a leader.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Ronnie, for spending a little bit of time with us. I'm going to bring Brian on, and thanks, Ronnie. I appreciate it greatly.
You're very welcome.
And Brian, how are you doing?
Hey, Tony, doing all right. Well
Awesome.
said by Ronnie, as always.
Yeah, exactly. And as usual, I don't know if you even need a follow-up after.
Right. We're gonna wrap up early.
Wrap up. No, but, Brian, you and I have known each other for a little bit, obviously. And I've always sort of seen you as a leader. From what I've talked about, I've known that from the beginning of our relationship. I've always seen you being very much of a visionary and someone who's very much into the numbers, and you had a plan of growing and expanding your centers. What did you think about what you were going to get out of this program before you got into it?
I think I came in with a hope to help get farther out of the chaos and the day-to-day pressures and just feeling like everything revolves around you being available all the time as the leader.
Yeah.
And there were definitely a lot of tools for that in the program.
And so, you mentioned something I think is super important. One of the elements of this from an owner perspective, we're talking about, the directors becoming leaders, but it is sort of rising above your current level of issues of taking on everybody else's problems. Not that the problems aren't important, but how had this program, when you got involved, how has it helped you?
Well, and Ronnie said something similar, which is, I think just when your team, again, with multiple sites, when your leadership, when your directors are calling you up with every problem in the world, instead of saying, all right, here's what you're going to do, A, B, C, you're going to just stop and say, wow, what do you think you should do? Or how do you think you should handle it? And I know when I started the training, it's like, you feel like I'm going to tell people that they're going to be like, what's wrong with you? Just give me the answers. Why would you do that? And there's probably like a little bit of a learning curve for the directors, but what I thought they were going to be like mad, but I think the reverse happened. They basically would talk it through themselves with me just sort of encouraging and asking maybe a probing question and getting their thinking going, and they come up with a solution. And then at the end, you're able to say, okay, so how are you going to implement that? And they tell you, say, that sounds like a great plan. Let me know how it goes. So instead of saying, all right, now this is on my plate, you spent the time talking through it. They've helped develop their thought processes. So maybe next time they're not going to call you. They're going to say, oh, that happened again. And I fixed it. Same thing as last time, a little different. And it starts building their own skills. And like I said, where I thought they were going to be missing, feeling unsupported because I wasn't solving the problems, it was actually the reverse, where you could see them grow and really appreciate it.
That's awesome. So you definitely see how you're starting to empower them, which we're talking about. Since we now focus this next session on directors, and directors, focus on this coaching model as part of their leadership, what would you envision a director getting out of this kind of program and the way that they work with a teacher? What could change, and what could elevate from that?
Well, I think to some extent, even that same firefighting or that same way where teachers are constantly bringing issues to the director, and I say issues, they're small, like, we're out of paper towels over here. Okay, am I the only one that can solve that, or is there another way? Or maybe at least working with the staff saying, okay, we're out of paper towels. How can we make sure this doesn't happen again? Instead of just being like, okay, I need to send someone to the grocery store right now, and it's an emergency. So maybe helping them take those same steps, and even if they're forced to solve a now problem, at least work through it with the people and ask the teachers, what do they think? How do they think it can be solved? I think that same set of skills.
Yeah. As I asked Ronnie, whether it be a director or whether it be yourself, when you went through the program, did you happen to struggle with anything? Because I know oftentimes you're sitting down with peers, as directors would sit down with their peers, and they're presenting problems that you've probably heard before,
It is interesting seeing how many, there's a few things. As you said, the Zoom is different to get used to, and it's hard clearing your schedule and knowing that's on there, and okay, 2 hours and I've got all these things happening, but I got to make time. But then when you get in there after 10 or 15 minutes, you're just into the flow and learning the new material. And then the breakout rooms are tremendous. So, we get into a breakout room usually with 2 other owners. And then you sort of start practicing your coaching skills. But and it is confidential, we don't then talk about that outside of it. But when you hear what someone else is going through, it seemed like 9 times out of 10, or at least 3 out of 4 times, you're like, oh yeah, I've been through that too. But even then, we're not solving the problem. We're helping coach, another owner, a peer, through the same problem. We're not saying, oh, here's what I did, or here's what you should do, which is harder at the beginning of the program. I think we all like, wait, no, you know what? And you stop yourself and you help them work through it and think through, what else is possible, and how, what are their mental blocks and how is it working? So the breakout rooms were excellent at practicing and learning to hone the skills that you just heard them on slides. You're like, oh, that makes sense, but then you have to do it.
Awesome. So I guess I would say to you, Brian, sort of like I did with wrapping with Ronnie here, obviously you afforded your time to come on here. You refer and recommend this program for directors as well as other owners?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great, and not only is it a great investment of time, I think it's going to pay off for a long period of time. It's not even like your normal training you go to and you write down 2 or 3 ideas and you maybe implement one. It's just the kind of thing that keeps coming back day after day, week after week. Wait, I remember in coaching, and there's just some small techniques and I'm going to use them now. And then the more I use them, the more they just become natural. So it's really a lifelong, or at least a very long time. I'm sure that, some follow-up training in the future, refresher, but it really has, I think, long lasting possibilities.
Well, I really appreciate all the kind words for it, but I think they're very direct words. And Brian, thanks so much for taking your time with giving us some of your thoughts about the program.
Thanks, Tony. Great program.
Yeah, thank you. To give that perspective for everybody out there, this is different than your typical leadership skills training program. This is different than a lot that are out there today, where you might go to something like, okay, let's talk about the big challenges that are out there. And we're going to talk with our peers. How do you handle this? And how do you handle this? And how do you handle this? What this is giving life skills to your leadership team. And when we talk about life skills, we're talking about a way to actually manage through all different situations. The great thing about the coaching skills for this leadership program are that not only do you have the ability for your directors, and if you choose to go through them as an owner operator in the future, not only do you have the ability to use them directly in your schools, but you really use them throughout your life with your partner, with your spouses, with other people that you work with, and they really become a fantastic skill that allows you to work every day, like Brian was saying, on these programs. So it's not like I have to wait until something pops up. You literally have an opportunity to use it every day. So moving forward and just starting to conclude a little bit, yes, there's an investment in it. For the Certified Director Development Leadership Program, the typical cost for this program is about $4,000, and with materials even over $4,000. But the investment that we have brought here for our members, this is a specific member rate. A non-member rate is definitely above this, but for our members, it is $29.95. It is a one-time upfront payment that does cover all the sessions and all the materials that are involved within the program. In addition to that, Jim has, as the leader of this program, the facilitator of this program, he keeps an open door and office hours throughout the length of the program and even after the program. What that means is, if you have one of your directors who really sort of comes out of one of the coaching sessions, or maybe they have questions about one of the pieces of homework, or they're really feeling like, you know what, I'm not sure if I'm getting the concept greatly, Jim has a door that's wide open for people to come in and ask him those questions, and he will very much take that coaching approach and work and engage with that individual. This is about that lifelong journey, and Jim is invested in this, Jen is invested in this, Inspire Care 360 and myself are very much invested in this. So classes start at the end of March for our next session. We only have 3 spots left at this point in time for this session. And with those 3 spots, that gets us up to 9. If we do have a big run over of spots, we will look at opening up another class in the near future. But it is an opportunity for you right now to take advantage of it for your director. I would say that the payoff hopefully is 10 to 20 times that in the value you have if you can just retain some of your existing staff from your director having better leadership skills. It should be a huge return on your investment. So with that said, I want to say thank you for everybody who has attended. I want to open up the floor right here to see if anybody has any questions. And if they don't have any questions at this point in time, you always have the ability to respond. So if you do have any questions, let's see and let us know. And I have
hey,
Bob.
Tony, Bobby, I have a question. You mentioned earlier, I'm sorry, what?
I said, please.
Oh, you mentioned earlier that there is, and I apologize for my camera just died. Is there one for owners?
There will be one for owners coming up in the late spring, early summer. So the one that we had that both Brian and Ronnie were part of, we're going to be repeating that session in the late spring. So we have one coming up, and as soon as we have enough participants that have signed up for that class, but we've already had several people raise their hand.
I'm raising my hand.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we would love to have you, Bob. You'd be a great addition.
Bob. I'll put you on the list.
And there be Jen. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bob. Do we have any other questions? Okay, so with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and be signing off. And for those of you who saw this live, fantastic. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to Jen. You all do know Jen as your member advocate. You can always reach out at the email. And this is also going to be sent out for replay. So there's a number of people who will be watching this for replay. So thank you all very much for your participation. We greatly appreciate your time. I'm Tony D'Agostino with Inspire Care 360, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care, everybody.